I'm Rabbi Josh Brown. Again, welcome to our friends from House of the Lord. It is so nice to be able to have you as our guests. This evening, we only wish, of course, that you were here in person. I want to introduce myself, especially to those guests who don't know me. I grew up in Atlanta, which was my great education and entry into having an incredible amount of pride for what happened in the city of my birth in the years prior to my birth. To be from Atlanta means to be proud, incredibly proud of the civil rights journey that the city took, the way in which it led the country, even if it was an example often of how challenging times were. And most importantly, of our favored son, the Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. from Ebenezer Baptist Church. Growing up in Atlanta was to know the people who flanked his sides in the marches, the Andrew Youngs, the Maynard Jacksons, the John Lewises. These were people we were so proud of. And so as a young Jewish kid in Atlanta, I too was proud of these children of our city who had become great American leaders. Later, I went to Los Angeles for seminary, and for 5 years, I lived in the most diverse city, as it's often referred to in our country, and experienced my most intense years of growth and identity. And when I left Los Angeles after 5 years for my first pulpit in North Carolina, I looked back, and I realized I could not name one good friend who was not Jewish. I could not think of somebody who I spent any significant time with who in the most diverse city in our country was just like me. And so if Atlanta taught me to be proud of diversity and of the heroes of civil rights, Los Angeles taught me that this journey is on me, that simply living in a place that's diverse or a place that is proud of its history, that has made progress, does not make you a part of that progress, that we have to do this work. And here we are now. As I reflect on those times and get to know you, at a time when the pressures of the world have been pushing on us to make the walls of our bubbles as hard as steel, to separate from other people because those other people might kill us with the force of their hands or the germs of their body. I believe that this series that we're starting is one step in a great struggle as to how we fight back, by reminding ourselves that separating ourselves from every other person does not ultimately protect us. It just means that we are more willing to be alone in our struggles than we are to solve them. These next 4 weeks for me are the steps out of our fear-filled bubbles. Someone recently shared with me that we should not just honor the legacies of our heroes, we have to extend the legacies of our heroes. And that's what I think we're trying to do. We have to honor Martin Luther King Jr. and Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel, as you'll come to know in the Shared Legacies film. But I also hope that the steps we take as two communities coming together do much more than honor. I hope we extend the path that they started walking, because we have not only a shared legacy, we have the opportunity to have a shared future. It's with that in mind that I am so honored to pass this virtual microphone to my new friend, Pastor Brake from House of the Lord, as I invite him to introduce himself to you as well. Pastor Brake.
Good evening to Rabbi Brown and to the whole Temple Israel congregation. It is a privilege and an honor to be able to participate in your social action Shabbat service. On behalf of our founder and preaching pastor, Bishop Joey Johnson, and the entire House of Lord family, it is really an honor for us to be able to come together and begin to talk about shared legacies among Black and Jewish relations. My name is Pastor Daren. I'm one of the pastors here at the House of the Lord. And when Kathy approached me with the idea of putting together this Shared Legacies program, I knew it was something that I needed to be a part of. One, because when I first started pastoring, one of the things I reflected on was what did I want my pastorate to be about when this was all said and done and I retired, and what did I want to be remembered for? And one of the things that floated to the top of my list was I wanted to be known and wanted to be remembered as being a bridge builder. And a lot of the time and energy I've given to that has been just simply among Black and white relations. But Kathy introduced me to a whole nother dynamic, which is the Black and Jewish relationships. And I have to admit that was not a relationship that I had given much thought to. But after talking with her and this aligning with the core values of who I am, I knew this was something I needed to participate in, not just because it was important, but because it could be a learning experience for me myself as I got to interact with Kathy and got to get to know Rabbi Brown and got to interact with Rabbi Werber, and we would come together and have very real and open conversations and dialogues. And this has really been a blessing to me, and I just know if you stick with this program, if you participate with this program that we've outlined for you, I'm sure that you will come out a little bit different on the other side, and that this will be a blessing to you and to your family. In thinking about the question, what does it mean to lament, and why should we embrace lamenting? I can't help but think about how the Black church in particular, we interpreted lamenting, and it can really comes out in the songs of the church, some of the old hymns and the spirituals and that were sung even on the plantation fields of the antebellum South. And when I think about lamenting and what does it mean and why is it important is I think of three words. The three words I think about is reality, grief, and hope. We can't live in denial. We have to be able to face reality. We have to be able to call a thing what it is. And we cannot act like everything is great and everything is coming up roses when that is not the case. Living in denial will not do anything for us, but we must come together and be able to face reality and stare the difficult situation in the face and be able to move forward in a positive way. Grief is the next word that comes to mind, because grief is how you deal with the reality and the hardships and the disappointment and the loss that we are facing right now because of our context, because of the racial injustice, because of the discrimination, because of all of those kind of things that we are dealing with day in and day out within the United States of America. It is so important that we grieve that we are not the connected nation that we once claimed to be. We are not the melting pot. We are more of a salad bowl with a bunch of different ingredients just banging together, but we're not really coming together. We're colliding instead of connecting. And we need to grieve that. We need to face reality. We need to grieve the results of the reality that we are living in, but we have to do that without falling into complete despair. And that's where hope comes in. That's where the hope of our faith comes in. That you can be able to hold within the proper tension. Yes, there is despair on this side. Yes, there is discouragement. But on the other hand, there is a hope that I have, a hope in humanity, a hope that we can be live up to the true nature that we have inside of us, that we are better than the way we are acting nowadays. And that's what I think lamenting is. It's a way to embrace reality. It's a way to grieve what we're missing and grieve the pain of the reality that we're embracing, but also it's a way to do it and stay hopeful that weeping may endure for the night, but there is joy that comes in the morning. Yes, trouble does not last always. There are times when we will have to go through some stormy days and some dark nights, but trouble does not last always, and that there will be a new day and the sun will come up and we will come out of this better than the way we came in. But we must embrace reality. We must grieve reality, and we must maintain a sense of hope. And that is what I believe lamenting is, and I believe that is so important for us personally, but then also when it comes to the interaction with each other because of our shared legacies, because of our shared experiences with oppression and discrimination and things along those lines. When we can put ourselves in each other's shoes and begin to weep and lament with each other because of the pain of the other person, that is what will really begin to fortify us. That is what will begin to bring us together. And that is where the true conversation, the true dialogue, and where the shared legacies can then become one legacy. Not two legacies that are kind of going down the path together, but they can actually become, in some respects, one legacy as we come together and unify with the ability to sit where each other sits, to enter into the pain of the other person, not with judgment, not trying to compare it to our own pain, but simply being a heart with ears, listening, trying to understand, trying to relate, not trying to do anything other than simply be a shoulder to lean on, a shoulder to cry on, and begin to weep and embrace the pain that another human is feeling. When we lament in that way, I believe that is what will begin to bring upon true change, not just in Black and Jewish relationships, but that can be infectious and that can begin to spread throughout this culture altogether. So that's what lamenting means to me. That's what lamenting, I believe, means into the Black church culture. And as well as that is why I believe that lamenting is important for us to practice, because we need to face reality. We need to grieve reality. But we must remain hopeful that this is not the ultimate. This is not the end of things, and that there is more to come.
Thank you, Pastor Brake. You taught us about lamenting as a verb. I want to talk about it as a text, as a person, as a place, a subject. In Judaism, when we hear the word lament, we think of the book from the Bible, Lamentations. And in Hebrew, the name of this book is Eicha. It's a painful word. Even just saying it hurts a little bit. Eicha, a word of crying out. My best translation would be that Eicha is the word that in those moments when life hits you so hard that without thinking or forming a word, your body just shouts out, "Oh Lord, where am I?" If Lamentations was a word, the word is one that comes out of us without thought, of pure emotion and pain, a call to a higher power and to the world to see us in our pain, even if we don't want to be seen, even if being seen is the last thing we want in that moment. We can't help it. Eicha, the word for Lamentations, comes out of us. The poetic verses that follow tell the story of a woman abused, raped, betrayed, and then laughed at by her enemies. If you read the book of Lamentations, you will find that it does not hold back on how bad it can feel to be in this world. One verse reads, "Ensnared like a bird by my enemies without cause, they cut off my life in a pit and threw stones at me. The waters flowed over my head, and I thought I was doomed until I called out your name, God, from the depths of the pit." If Lamentations is a person, it is a person abused and betrayed. But it's also a person who never gives up, who even from the lowest place, the pit, that place that I have been told by so many of you, you have experienced in your life for any number of reasons, that person believes that a godly hand will reach out to her call for help. But the ultimate beauty of the book of Lamentations is that the woman it is talking about is not a person at all. It's a city. Lamentations was written during the most terrible, violent-filled, destructive times in the history of Jerusalem, the sacred city. It talks of a city that has been left by its people. Its opening words, the first verse of the book, say the city that was great with people has become like a widow. And so Lamentations is not just a verb, it is a place. It is a city where people are not welcome. A city at the bottom of a pit whose enemies are cheering in victory. To lament is to be in that city and to cry out as citizens that we need help. To lament means to be in that place. And I don't need to tell you that we have come to know the names of that place in this last year and in the years prior. That place is Pittsburgh and Charleston and Parkland and Ferguson, Poway and Minneapolis, and just weeks ago, our very nation's capital. We know those cities are lamenting. We know that that's what lamenting is. It is that place. And so if the first question was, what does it mean to lament? It means to be in that place, in that pit, where all you can do is cry out for divine help because it looks like there's no clear human answer. Then the why do we do it? Echa, we cry out because if we don't, we will just suffer alone. And the beauty of this cry is that the answer is often not even a word, but a person and a place where we show up. In Jewish tradition, when someone dies, we lament. We don't usually call it that, we call it Shiva. Shiva means that we go to the family's home in the days after the passing. But Jewish tradition tells us that we should not bring flowers and that we should not feel that we have to say anything because perhaps there's nothing we can say and there are no flowers that will make this moment beautiful for that family because they are lamenting. They are in that place. But what can help them is our presence, our being in that space with them to make it a space in which they are not alone, and that being there will give them hope. Lamentations is a place. We go there because if we do not, we will just suffer alone. And that is not where we, nor God, wants us to be.
But what advice do I have for Black and Jewish communities to lament together? I touched on this some in my answer to the previous question, but I can go a little bit further and push this a little bit deeper. I think one thing that Black people need to do is that we need to be open. We need to be open to having deeper relationships with our Jewish brothers and sisters. But on the other side, I think our Jewish brothers and sisters need to understand that we need allies in you. We have been saying the same thing for hundreds of years, and we need people that look like you to also share our stories, to be willing to be allies for us. And I think those two things coming together, that would be one advice I would give that would set a context, that will set the table, if you will, for us to be able to sit down and begin to lament together. Outside of that, it goes back to being a heart with ears for each other, not trying to compare pain. Everyone's pain is uniquely their own. I cannot compare your oppression to my oppression. I cannot compare your pain to my pain. But what I can do is try to have compassion for you. What I can do is try to enter into the pain that you feel. And what you can do is to do the same for me. And if we come together with that kind of perspective, not trying to cast judgment, not trying to convince, not trying to do anything more than listen and understand. In all our getting, if we can just get some understanding, and that comes by willing to just sit with each other, to hear each other's stories, to begin to engage in relationship with each other. Those are some simple ways. Get into the same spaces with each other. Our lives are so segregated that we need more programs like this, more opportunities like this for us to have more shared spaces. And in those shared spaces, we can begin to interact and dialogue with each other. And I think one thing that we will find out is that we have a lot more in common than we don't have in common. And that there's a lot of life and a lot of our just human experience that we can share with each other. So that is the advice that I would give. And as I bring my remarks to a close, I would say that is my prayer to be the result of this Shared Legacies program. As we move forward over the next 4 weeks or so, and we have amazing programs laid out once a week for everyone to participate in, is that each program that we will begin to see each other a little bit more. With each program that we'll begin to be willing to listen to each other a little bit more. With each program that we'll be willing to embrace each other a little bit more, that we'll be willing to just be quiet and listen to each other a little bit more. So that is some advice that I would give for our Black brothers and sisters, as well as my Jewish brothers and sisters, to come together and begin the process of lamenting. I know it's uncomfortable. A lot of times when someone is crying around another person, we want them to stop. Not so much because that's what's good for them, but because that's what makes us feel better. But if we can push past being uncomfortable, if we can push past not wanting to be in a space where we really don't understand why someone feels the way they feel, but if we can just connect with the fact that another human is hurting, that another human is suffering, that another human is dealing with some tough situations, with some discrimination and things along those lines, that will then begin to make a way for us to begin to lament together and begin to share in each other's struggle and share in each other's pain. And when that happens, there is nothing left but for us to begin to build authentic, deep, true relationships with each other. And that is my prayer, that will be the result of this, and I pray that this service is the catalyst for that taking place. It has been a pleasure to share with you, Rabbi Brown. I look forward to getting to know you more. And when this pandemic is all over, Temple of Israel, I hope to see you in person at some point. And this has been an honor. And on behalf, again, from the House of Lord family, we care about you, we love you, and we look forward to embracing you further in this process.
First, I want to thank Pastor Brake for his words. We are always eager to learn from new teachers, and we believe our best teachers become our friends. We look forward to the friendship that we have ahead. And I want to close by sharing the words of an atheist admiring the beauty of a church. I figure it can only add to the diversity of this moment. Alan de Botton wrote that the power of the church is that it marks off a piece of the earth, puts walls up around it, and declares that within their parameters there will reign values utterly unlike those which hold sway in the world beyond, in the offices and gyms and living rooms of the city. For the art gallery legitimates the practice of peering silently at a canvas, and the nightclub of swaying one's hands to a musical score. But a church, a synagogue, a mosque, a house of worship gives us rare permission to lean over and say hello to a stranger without any danger of being thought predatory or insane. We are promised that in these spaces, the love of God and the fellowship of the Spirit belong to all who have assembled. These holy spaces lend their enormous prestige, accrued through age and learning and architectural grandeur, to our shy desire to open ourselves to someone new. Why are we doing what we're doing? We are doing this because the house of the Lord and Temple Israel and all of the houses of worship that we know as our brothers and sisters, this is what we are good at. We know how to treat people like a brother and a sister from within our sanctuaries, how to see the stranger as a face we are eager to greet. This is what churches, synagogues, and mosques were created to do. They are spaces to lament and celebrate, to be different than the outside world, to be holier than the outside world, so that one day when we finish working on the outside world, it will feel like the sanctuaries that we've known our whole lives and that we have called home. I look forward to the day when the seats of this sanctuary are filled with the faces from you, our friends at the house of the Lord, and the day when the pews in your church are speckled with Jewish faces.